In 1934, Carl Jung published an essay called Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. In it, he argued that we all share the same mental blueprints, universal patterns that reside in what he called the collective unconscious. He referred to them as archetypes, the basis for what we now call tropes. According to this logic, they are the reason why figures in stories share so many similarities, despite being from different cultures and ages. The trickster, the wise old man, and of course, the hero. But while the classic hero returns home with glory, there's a darker variant of this archetype, the one who builds an entire civilization only to be erased by it. This is the tragic hero. Best displayed in the works of Sophocles and Euripides, and finding its roots in ancient Greece, the tragic hero is defined as the protagonist of a tragedy, Antigone, Medea, and so many more. But the one that left the deepest imprint on me is actually from the Legend of Zelda. Bear with me. Using Oedipus Rex as a reference, since that's what Aristotle called the quintessential Greek tragedy, Oedipus is born to the king and queen of Thebes, but his life begins with a death sentence. A prophecy warns that the child will grow up to murder his father and marry his mother. To escape this fate, his parents pierce his ankles and leave him on a mountainside to die. But before it's too late, a shepherd saves the infant, and Oedipus is raised as a prince in a distant city. And as an adult, he hears the same prophecy. Unaware that he is adopted and wanting to protect the parents he loves, he flees that city forever. It's what you could call his call to action. On the road to Thebes, he gets into a violent dispute with a nobleman at a crossroad and kills him in a fit of rage. He arrives at the gates of Thebes to find the city terrorized by a sphinx. Oedipus solves the riddle, saving the city. As a reward, he is made king and marries the recently widowed queen. But the story doesn't end here. After 20 years of prosperity, a plague strikes Thebes. The gods declare it will only end when the murderer of the former king is brought to justice. Oedipus vows to find the killer, unaware that he is actually hunting himself. A series of mounting revelations reveals the sickening truth. The nobleman Oedipus killed was his father, and the queen he married was his mother. In an act of pure agony, the queen takes her own life. Oedipus, unable to look at the horror he has created, gouges out his eyes and exiles himself from Thebes. He ends his journey as a stranger to the very civilization he bled to protect. To properly compare Ocarina of Time to Oedipus Rex, we have to look at the anatomy of a tragedy as defined by Aristotle. It isn't just a series of unfortunate events, it's a systemical collapse. Aristotle described tragedy as a chain reaction. A hero makes a fatal mistake, the world turns against him, he realizes the truth too late, and both he and the audience pay the emotional price. Oedipus's hubris is his belief that he can outsmart the gods. His hamartia is the rage he showed at the crossroads. His peripeteia is the plague that affects the city. And his anagnorisis is the moment he realizes the man he killed was the father he was trying to save. At first glance, Ocarina of Time looks like the story of Perseus, a hero gifted with divine tools like the mirror shield, winged boots, etc. to slay a monster. But if you look closer, behind the typical hero's journey lies a tragedy of sacrifice, the cruelty of making a kid shoulder the unbearable burden of an entire kingdom. Similar to Oedipus, Link isn't raised in the city he's born in. Link begins as an outsider, a boy without a fairy in a forest of immortals. He is raised thinking he is a Kokiri when he is actually a Hylian. The moment the great Deku Tree calls him, he accepts the quest with a righteous passion for duty. This mirrors Oedipus's call to action. Link's courage is his greatness, sure, but it will later turn out to be his hamartia, blind, selfless obedience to a destiny greater than himself. The Greeks believed that one can only achieve a state of flourishing or eudaimonia either by speech-making or by fighting. While not explicitly stated, you could argue that this is also the reason why unconsciously Link or any other hero accepts their call to action. Moving on with the story, Link meets Princess Zelda, and together they hatch a plan to stop the villain Ganondorf. This is their hubris. They are children playing with the powers of the gods, believing they can outsmart a king of evil by opening the door of the sacred realm themselves. Throughout the game's story, Link gains 2 more sacred stones from Death Mountain and Jabu Jabu's belly. Thinking he's doing the right thing in an attempt to stop Ganondorf, he enters the sacred realm realm. The moment Link pulls the Master Sword from its pedestal is the peripeteia, the great reversal. He thinks he is claiming his prize, but instead, he is walking into a trap. Because he was too young to wield the blade, he is sealed away for 7 years, leaving the Triforce unguarded. His quote-unquote heroic act is the exact thing that allows Ganondorf to conquer the world. His mistake led to Hyrule's demise, just as Oedipus' mistake led to the plague. Both are extraordinarily competent and morally grounded, and arguably because of that, they make a fatal human error that leads to their ruin. That is the essence of the tragic hero. Further into the game, Link wakes up to an anagnorisis, a horrifying epiphany. He sees the ruin of Castle Town and realizes that he didn't save Hyrule, he handed it to a tyrant on a silver platter. He spends the rest of the game as a tool of Nemesis, the force of retribution. He systematically hunts down the evil in Hyrule, searching for the sages. The irony in the entire story is that all he's doing is correcting his own mistake, but the cost is high. He loses his childhood, his friends become distant sages, and his own identity is swallowed by the legend. And towards the end of the story, after the final battle with Ganondorf, comes the catastrophe. Zelda, feeling guilty for stealing his youth, uses the ocarina to send him back in time. She thinks she is giving him a gift, but for the hero of time, this is his exile. Zelda erases him from the world he saved, making him lose all the connections he's formed. The hero doesn't return with glory. He returns as a nobody, a stranger to a world that wouldn't exist without him. The catharsis hits in the final frame. Link stands in the courtyard, facing a Zelda who doesn't even know his name. Like Oedipus, he ends his journey alone, a stranger to the very civilization he bled to protect. Majora's Mask is the point where the story breaks off from the classic Greek tragedy and becomes even more fractured. As we know, each Kokiri is given a fairy. Link only got Navi to guide him on his mission to save Hyrule. It was an exception, but with his role now fulfilled, with Hyrule being saved, Navi leaves. Symbolically, she acts as the companion who represents the end of the hero's journey, but also as a symbol for his purpose, his adventure, his childhood. Link's search for her, his search for his childhood, leads to a new world, Termina. Here, his identity crisis reaches its peak. Keeping it short this time, Link must stop a maniacal Skull Kid from causing the moon to destroy everything in a 3-day cycle. The mask mechanic, which is where the game got its name from, is a haunting metaphor for a soul that no longer knows its own shape. Link is literally inhabiting the bodies of the dead, a fallen Deku, a forgotten Goron hero, and a dying Zora musician. I've linked a video in the description that shows how each of these 3 masks represent Link's childhood, adulthood, and adolescence. I thought it was pretty interesting, so definitely check it out. By assuming these identities to solve the problems of Termina, Link effectively erases himself further. He becomes a vessel for others' legacies, while his own hero of time status remains a secret ghost. The tragedy is that Link is most useful to the world when he is someone else. When he's on the moon and finally faces the enemy, there's a happy child playing around that asks a sort of provocative question. Quote, "Your true face, what kind of face is it? I wonder, the face under the mask, is that your true face?" For a hero who has been a child, an adult, and literally a god, the answer is nothing. And that is the point that brings us to the concept of metanoia. Please forgive me on the Greek words. In modern times, we think of it as simple regret, but in the Greek sense, it's a belated wisdom, a soul-shifting realization that comes only after the damage is irreversible. The probably best example for this is when Link puts on the Goron mask, assuming the identity of Darmani, a hero who died in bitter regret because he could not save his people. By wearing the mask, Link takes that failure onto himself, acting as a proxy for a spirit that cannot rest. He is quite literally wearing the physical form of another man's metanoia. As teased earlier, the ultimate irony in Greek tragedy is that the hero is both extraordinarily capable and highly moral, and it is these exact admirable qualities that lead him into his ruin. Link is snared by his own greatness, his extraordinary competence, his righteous passion for duty, his selflessness, and of course, his courage. These made him save a kingdom, but at the cost of himself. And this cycle of unacknowledged sacrifice leads directly into Twilight Princess, because when Zelda sent him back to his childhood, she unintentionally inflicted the greatest Greek punishment, aklios, a death without glory. I mean, it goes without saying that in the child timeline, this Link's greatest deeds never actually happened. He was forced to live a life where his courage was ignored, a hero without a journey. As a consequence of metanoia, the deep regret and agony and loneliness of being forgotten and having his identity stripped away from him, he lingers around as a remnant of the legend, as a relic of what he once was. Hyrule Historia states, quote, "Ever since returning to the child era, the swordsman has lamented the fact that he was not remembered as a hero," end quote. Mirroring how the hero of Twilight can only appear as a wolf in the Shadow Realm, the hero of Time can only appear as a golden wolf in the world of the living, only being able to access his physical Stalfos-esque form in the semi-astral training ground. Theories suggest that his tragic isolation is captured in Hyrule Castle, engraved in the words, "The cursed swordsman sleeps before the sacred tree." He couldn't move on because he felt like a failure, not because he lost the fight, but because he had no one to pass the torch to, because he had nothing to show for. For centuries, the hero of Time was a master with no student, a legend with no legacy. Only after the hero of Twilight masters all 7 hidden skills can the hero of Time find his own version of catharsis. His final words serve as the closing movement of his tragedy. Quote, "Although I accepted life as the hero, I could not convey the lessons of that life to those who came after. At last, I have eased my regrets." End quote. With his knowledge finally anchored in history and his quote-unquote son ready to carry the blade, the hero of Time finally achieves what many Greek heroes could not. He steps out of the shadow of his own tragedy and at long last rests in peace. If you've made it this far, thanks a lot for watching this video. Feel free to disagree with any of the points I've mentioned in the comments down below. But before we finish this, I think what this whole video does is prove that the real tragedy behind the Legend of Zelda's child timeline is that the hero who made it possible was nothing more than a legend. In the end, the greatest tragedy of Hyrule is that the hero who saved it was erased from it, that the warrior who protected the legend was never part of its name.